How do you tell the difference between genuine conviction and just plain old stubbornness? Plain old stubbornness. I think this one is pretty straightforward. In my view, the difference between these two is whether or not somebody is actually willing to investigate, whether somebody is willing to actually go through the work of talking with you about it, explaining it to you, and submitting it to actual rational inquiry, right? Are they willing to go to where the light is rather than simply situating themselves in darkness? Are they willing to look at the counter examples, the counterfactuals, this other kind of information, or do they kind of just ignore all that? Do they ignore any attempt to either prove or, I guess, test what they are trying to do? Because true conviction comes out of that process, I think, of testing. It comes out of that process of you have had a certain amount of experiences in your life that have shown you, have convinced you that whatever belief you hold is true, and you are willing, in that sense, to put it to the test. If somebody is really convinced of the opposite belief, you are willing to uh, to prove the case, however it may be. So, just a silly example that comes to mind. You always have these sort of debates around lifting or diets or bodybuilding, right? What's the best exercise to do? What's the best routine? What's the best nutrient intake, right? What's the best kind of diet for the best kind of muscle mass or endurance? And the sort of bro science types, the types that are just sort of stubborn about the way that they've been training for years and years or eating for years and years, they're not going to be interested in going to look at the science, right? They're not going to be interested in finding the highest quality scientific papers that are available on the subject and seeing whether or not their conviction, whether or not their belief stands up to scientific scrutiny or not. Whereas somebody who has conviction about it, because of the experiences that they have, they're going to be open to testing it, to seeing whether or not their beliefs actually hold true or not. They're not going to be afraid of exposing it in one way or another. You kind of see this with people who are severely overweight. People will tell them, hey, maybe you should try to clean up your diet. Maybe you should exercise. Maybe you should eat less, whatever it is, go for a walk. And they will say something like, in stubbornness, they'll say, no, it's fine. And they have no symptoms and they're not sort of stepping on the scale. They'll say, no, my diet is fine. I don't need to go out. I'm fine. I'm healthy, whatever. But they'll avoid the scale, right? They'll avoid going to the doctor and seeing whether or not they are truly healthy. And really, even if a doctor tells them, look, you need to lose some weight, they're going to persist in the stubbornness against all evidence, against all facts to the contrary. They are going to persist in whatever belief that they hold. And that's really the sign of stubbornness. The person who has conviction is going to be willing to test it. They're going to be willing to go where their ideas can be proved, or their thoughts can be proved, or their manner of life can be proved, right? They're going to be willing to see whether or not their decisions or their ideas have negative or disastrous consequences. And they're going to look seriously and curiously at that, not just as an attempt to, mask their belief in some sort of credulity, but a seriously attempt to try to understand. That's something you can see externally. The one thing, though, that I know I would be caught on, because this is what I would say philosophically to somebody who is talking about this and who believes in God on the basis of faith is your faith stubbornness? Because as I've said before, belief in God is not something that gets tested, right? Or not exactly that. One has faith in God. One has faith in the salvation of Jesus, regardless of any seeming evidence to the contrary. And faith is not something which I submit to reason. I don't change my mind based on reason or not. And if I was presented with logical fallacies, which I presented plenty to myself, or even empirical evidence of the non-existence of God, I wouldn't believe in it. I would continue to believe in God. I would continue to put faith in Jesus because of what God has revealed. And according to my own standard, that would be something like stubbornness. I don't know if I really have a good defense against that necessarily. Though I think one of the things when we talk about conviction in terms of faith, one of the signs of it is that it really impacts your lifestyle. So, for example, I wouldn't have done videos like this if I didn't have faith in Jesus. I wouldn't be going out street preaching if I didn't have faith in Jesus. And that's partly because I've had so much fear in my life. I've had to combat fear so much in my life. And since Jesus has come into my life, I don't have that same fear and that same worry because I know where I'm headed. I know that I have the eternal promise of life. I know that this experience is really nothing but a shadowy nightmare at the end of the day that I'm going to wake up from. And that changes actually how I live my life. There are those moments where you forget it, those moments where the weight of the world presses down on you. But when I am reminded of who God is, and when I'm reminded of God's goodness, that actually changes the way that I live. But does that make me any less stubborn? I don't know. I'm willing to be. I would say, if faith in God and Jesus is stubbornness, then I'm willing to be stubborn for Jesus, right? I'm willing to be a fool for God, if that's what it comes down to. I sincerely wish that God would reveal himself in everybody so that everybody would know. But, God gives particular people faith for particular reasons. And because the toughest part is the social, some people look down on you, right, for having faith. Some people look down on you for believing in God. And I was even one of those people. So, I mean, I was even one of those people, I would say. And it's totally understandable it's totally understandable when you don't believe in God. If you genuinely don't believe in God, then the people who do believe in God and in Jesus and then talk about the things that he's done and who he is, they sound insane. Because by every earthly standard, by every rational standard, it is insane. And so I totally understand why people kind of look at it that way. And the only thing I can say, I guess the only thing I can say that maybe differentiates it from truth, or sorry, from stubbornness, is that I know it's true. I know it with absolute certainty that it is true. I know that God exists and that Jesus is the path to salvation. I know that more than I know anything in my entire life. And that's as far as I can really go in terms of, I guess, proving that to somebody, because you really can't prove it. It doesn't depend on me for other people to see God. It depends on God moving in their hearts. And I can talk about the gospel, I can talk about Jesus, but I can't reveal God to other people without his intervention, so to speak. So I don't know. Maybe my faith in God is a form of stubbornness, but generally I think that stubbornness is beliefs that do not submit themselves to reason, beliefs that are unwilling to test or go and be tested, go and sort of looking at the evidence. That's what I would consider to be stubbornness. Maybe the biggest difference with faith is that it is a belief that really changes your life. It is a belief that really does constantly change your life. But whether that's a good defense of it, I don't know. But I'm also really not trying to defend it at the same time. So anyway, I think it's where we're going to end it.